Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 288 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 16 of A Dance with Dragons, which is Daenerys 2. Nope, which is Daenerys 3. You know what's funny is, when I started the notes, I thought this was the second Daenerys chapter, and it's been in my head ever since.
Well...
Even though it says 3 in clear letters, clear numbers right there, I still said 2.
Well, you know, you've got a whole episode to work through that, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers. Then we are going to spoil things for you, but regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing very well, actually. Do you want to hear? This is going to be very strange to you. So... Oldham are in the playoffs. My soccer team, Oldham Athletic, are in the playoffs to get out of the 5th tier of English soccer.
Okay.
In the upward direction towards to the 4th tier.
Yeah. Right, yes. Good. That's the good way.
Today we had our first game in the playoffs, and basically it's just a straight knockout. You play a quarterfinal, a semi-final, and a final, and the winner of the final moves up, and everybody else stays where they are.
Sure.
Okay. My brother mentioned at the weekend that I could get that this is available in the United States. And sure enough, I researched it, and sure enough, I could get the game.
Perfect.
So, with low expectations, I paid 13 of my hard-earned dollars for a month's subscription to this bizarre service that covers Oldham's league for some reason. And would you believe we won 4-0?
Wow. That's a drubbing right there.
We were 3-0 up after 11 minutes.
11 minutes? I don't know a ton about soccer, but that feels like a lot in a hurry.
I have never seen an Oldham game that made me feel so relaxed before. I was like, what? I just expected it to be tense, awful, and then we would lose at the end. That's right. That's my expectation as an Oldham
sports.
Player.
That's how sports go.
Yeah. And sports generally, yeah. But I was thinking about the comparison between this playoff and sort of like playoffs of American sports. This is worse. This is harder. Because if you think about it, if you lose in the playoffs in American sports, you missed out on winning the big thing.
Right. Yeah, you have next year.
You have next year. And next year will be just the same as it would have been if you'd won the big thing.
Right. Yeah.
You'll still be playing the same teams. This is... Your entire next year is dependent on this. If you lose this game, you're playing these schlubs again next year.
Right.
But if you can get through this, you're going to be playing in the promised land
of
next
the
year.
4th league.
The 4th tier, where the big boys play.
That's right. Well, so what do they have left? What's ahead of them now?
So next up, we've lost home field advantage now. We have to go and play a team that's higher ranked than us.
Wait, just because you won 4-0 and lost home field advantage, or was this already built in? As far as you can,
it was already built in.
Okay.
Yeah. The second and the first and second seed, who were the second and third in the table, got a pass into the next round. They play the winners of. We were 5th versus 6th or something like that. So we have to go to the team that finished second.
Okay.
We just went there in the regular season and got a 1-1 tie. So.
All right. Well.
If we play like we did tonight, we will win. We were absolutely superb. I am genuinely stunned. And the other thing that was genuinely stunning, so this game was in Oldham, okay? Uh-huh. Oldham is somewhat notorious for its shocking weather. The sun was blazing down on the field. Meanwhile, it's an absolute deluge where I am. I was like, what the heck? This is not right.
It was backward.
Exactly.
I don't know if you all had that. We had a huge thundercrack. Probably not, because you guys are enough miles away that
Right.
Yeah. We had a huge thunder crack that actually caused the power to go out for a bit.
Wow.
I could see, so I was sitting in my office and I could see out my window that my neighbor was like, putting soil or something down in kind of in the front of her yard there, prettifying it in some way or another.
Mm-hmm.
When that thunder crack went off, she was like the road runner.
There were 2 bags of potting soil and 2 smoking shoes.
Yes, the bags are still out there. She made a beeline for her garage like nothing I've seen before.
I must have told this story on the pod because this was within the lifetime of the pod, but Carson had me climb a tree to do something, cut a limb down or something. And I was looking around, I was like, it's getting pretty ominous, dear. She said, you'll be fine. If you hear thunder, just come in. And the very first peal of thunder was right over the top of us. It was like, come, and I'm on a metal ladder. Like, fantastic.
What could go wrong here?
But the other thing was, the thunder came in the instant I paid for that service. So the instant, how cheap I am. This $13. I was like,
right.
Should I do it?
They had to pull every nickel out of your hand to get it.
Exactly. And then the thunder started, and I was like, you know what's going to happen here, don't you? As soon as the game starts, we're going to lose power. I'm not going to be able to watch this thing. Which then reminded me of the last time I paid to watch Oldham. I've told you this story. When a bank of fog rolled in.
Yes.
The commentator could still see what was going on, but the camera couldn't see anything. All it could see was fog. And just occasionally the ball would pop out of the top of the fog and fall back in again.
Yeah, I remember this.
The commentary was kind of funny because he obviously didn't notice how bad the fog was. He could see what was going on. He kept saying so, it's getting kind of foggy, but he would go, and now Jones to Smith, and, Cross comes in. I was like, what is going on?
What?
I paid $10 for this.
And now it's gone up $3, but at least this time it...
But you know what? I told my brother that I had 2 choices. I could pay for the game, or I could pay for the entire playoffs.
Oh, hedging your bets
and
here.
My brother said, don't you dare pay for the whole playoffs. You can't do that. That's just red rag to a bull for the gods.
Right.
But I did it just so I was like, I'll just be cavalier and do it. Right. No expectations. But you know what's happened now? Now I've begun to hope.
Oh, no. Hope is a dangerous thing in sports.
Oh, yeah.
Well, hey, I'm glad to hear it. I always root for the athletic from afar.
You've never heard me say that Oldham won 4-0, have you? I mean, that must be the first time you've ever heard. Carson was watching, kind of, not really paying attention. But she said, that's by far the most entertaining Oldham game I've ever seen, out of probably 100.
Right. Yes, usually when you give me an update, it's something sad or pulling it out by the skin of their teeth or something like that.
Yes, yes. And the pulling out by the skin of their teeth is surviving from the next level of falling, not moving up. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But if we win the next game, we get to play at Wembley Stadium, which is the national stadium, with a capacity of like 90,000.
And I'm sure it will be full. It'll be a full house in there.
Well, today it was a full house at Oldham today. There were 13,000 in attendance, which is a huge crowd for that league. I mean, that's an order of magnitude more than...
Your sister was there?
I didn't see her. I was watching. I didn't have the sound up very high. That's usually how to catch my sister. Unless they have like a swear button, in which case you wouldn't hear anything she said.
Beep, beep, beep.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, enough of this frivolity. Let's get down to business. How do we leave Daenerys Targaryen? So last we saw of Dany, she was comforting Miss Sandy. This was in Daenerys 2, by the way. She was comforting Miss Sandy, whose brother had been murdered by the Sons of the Harpy. Dany was receiving cryptic warnings from Qarth in a vision that she had while she was bathing. She was learning that Ned Stark was not all bad from Barristan Selmy, and she was tearfully visiting her chained dragons. Well, the 2 of them that she could manage to chain, I should say.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we give the summary of this one?
All right. Well, Dany is hosting Xaro XHoan Daxos. Remember last week I told you we were going to meet up with an old friend.
Oh, this is the old friend.
This is the old friend, yes.
I've never really considered him a friend, but
let's
see how this goes.
An old acquaintance, we'll say. Well, he's provided the night's entertainment, a dancing troupe who, are doing more than dancing, if you get my drift.
I do get your drift,
maybe,
because I read it.
Right. Yeah. Maybe the horizontal mambo might be the type of dancing that they're doing, although they don't seem to be horizontal. Anyway,
somehow they do that one vertically.
Yes. She's in a bit of a drought in that department, and it makes her long for Daario. He should be back soon, though. Messengers have reported that he has forged an alliance with the Lazarene and is traveling back to her. But if Xaro has his way, she'll be married before then. He reasserts his desire to marry the Khaleesi, all while eyeing the male dancers.
Dany knows she needs Xaro. Meereen's economy is a mess. Both of them know why. It was based on slavery. No slavery, no economy.
Right.
Xaro makes a plea for its reinstatement. There is a natural order to things. Some must toil so that others may pursue greater goals. Many freed slaves were better off and would gladly go back. He's an expert debater and squashes her objections, but ultimately he flounders on her abiding principle. Slavery is wrong. She benefited from it as Khaleesi and when she was hosted by Xaro, but Astapor, Yunkai and Meereen have opened her eyes to the evils of it.
Xaro wants to speak alone, Dany agrees, but alone for her includes Barristan Selmy. Xaro explains that Yunkai will rise against her, and if she leaves Meereen to fight the Yunkai, then Meereen will rise behind her. Her position is precarious. But he has an offer. He came to Meereen on his galley with 13 ships in attendance. She can have all 13. Take them back to Westeros. Leave Essos for the Asasi. His price? Only the promise that she will leave. She asks what will happen if she stays. Then Xaro expects her to not last very long. Pyat Pree, for one, is determined to get revenge.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Alone with Barristan, he's very keen on the plan. She's surrounded by enemies here, but friends await her return in Westeros. Next day, she wakes excited by the prospect. At court, Lord Ghael, the envoy of King Cleon of Astapor, returns. His king did not heed Dany's advice and attacked Yunkai. This military debacle has left the Butcher King horribly exposed, and he demands that the Unsullied be deployed to protect Astapor. Again, Dany refuses. The former slave spits in her face, which costs him a few teeth to strong Belwas, and only Dany's intervention spares Ghael further harm.
Indeed. Barristan and Admiral Groleo returned from the harbor. The boats are sound, not perfect, but all but one are adequate enough for the journey home. Resnack wails that he is to be abandoned to torture and death. Others point out that there's not enough ships for all her people. Grey Worm suggests that the Unsullied go over land, while the ships hug the coast. Skahaz doubts that many would survive the Demon Road with that plan. Eventually, Dany cuts the Gordian knot by announcing that she will not leave Meereen to its fate. She's learned the lesson from Astapor.
Xaro arrives with a tapestry map to help point her the way home. She gives him her decision. His facade of respect and flattery disappears in an instant. He tells her that she will die screaming. She orders him gone by morning. Next day, the 13 ships remain, but fly red banners from their masts. A messenger brings her a bloody glove. Qarth declares war.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
That's not good.
No. I found this, as a Dany fan, I'm a fan of all my POV characters, and as a Dany fan, even Catelyn Stark. I know a lot of people didn't seem to like Catelyn, but I was a fan of Catelyn.
What about
I'm
Cersei?
a fan of everyone.
How do you feel about Cersei?
Okay, you found the hole in my argument, I admit. But I am a fan of Dany, and I want the best for Dany. And it's difficult because I want the best for everyone, and some of these things are conflicting.
Yes, right.
Yeah. But Dany really had an opportunity here to get out of this mess.
Yes.
Not a great opportunity. It was always going to leave her in a moral quandary, but it was a one-way ticket home for her and a bunch of her people. Not all, but a bunch. And her dragons. But the reason that I like Dany is because she wouldn't take that morally dubious choice of leaving these people to their fate.
Yes.
She was always going to stay. And so this is the problem of being a Dany fan. Right. She's always going to take the hard road when the easy road leaves others in peril.
Yep, that was... Oh, we knew that she would do that. She's not the type of person that was just going to be like, well, sorry guys, you got to figure it out on your own from here,
You form a slave, you might want to say sorry.
Right. Yeah, I keep using the term that Dany is in the you broke it, you bought it position now when it comes to Slavers Bay in general, but especially those inside the walls of Meereen. So, and
And of course, all of this has redoubled her problems because now she's got Qarth to contend with. I mean, she already had Yunkai and Astapor. I mean, Astapor is nominally an ally, but
they're more of a pain than anything.
Exactly.
If they would do nothing, they would be much better used to her than the problems they keep creating. But like you said, speaking of Qarth, Xaro's back. I never thought we'd see him again.
No, I didn't, especially because I'm always influenced by the TV show. And last I saw him in the TV show, he was locked in a impenetrable vault, never to be seen again. So.
Yes. First we have Quaithe, now Xaro. What's next? Is Mirri Mazdor going to make a guest star appearance in a chapter?
That wouldn't be Dany's choice, I feel.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe Private P.
Yeah, maybe. But Dany thinks that Xaro has the ability to alleviate the major issues in the city, mostly through the reopening of trade. And, you do wonder, with the hostilities with Yunkai, it's not all-out war just yet, but there's definitely hostilities going on here. How would the trade work? Up until this point, she had no Meereenese fleet. Now she has a small one, but Yunkai has the previous Meereenese fleet, plus their own fleet, plus the forces they keep gathering. So you can imagine that they could just block the entrance to Slavers Bay, even if Xaro had agreed. Yeah, we'll take all the salt and terrible wine that you have, So
yeah, I mean, you raise a very good point because in some ways she's created opportunities in the economy by freeing the slaves. I mean, like we saw the weavers who had been slaves but now were able to make cloth for themselves. But the problem is that the Bunsen burner underneath this economy was always the slave trade.
Right.
And that's just been taken away. So you can have some internal economy now, but there's no money coming in. And with the privations caused by the sort of scorched earth policies of her enemies, meaning that food is in short supply, she really needs trade to help feed the people.
Yes.
And they don't really have anything other than slaves as an output,
Yeah. Yeah, she kind of goes through the trade opportunities and they're pretty bleak. She offers basically copper and salt. And Xaro's like, well, nobody needs any of those things, especially in Qarth. We're a seafaring city, We get all our salt from the water, and nobody really needs copper anymore because we're not in the Bronze Age. So,
Right. What she needs is someone to come up with the idea of hot running water.
Yeah,
because then the copper really sort of rides again at that point.
That's true, yeah. Or maybe electricity for copper wires. But there used to be cedar. This used to be a cedar forest, and that was they overforested, and the great masters, the previous leaders in Meereen, they burned all of the centuries-old olive trees, and so those are two options that are not available anymore to them. And it's funny, not funny, but it's kind of interesting that Galare, or Galar, I'm not sure exactly how you want to say her last name, but the Green Grace, we'll go with.
The Green Grace, yes.
Yes, said that it was the overforesting that led to slaving. So, because when the cedars were all felled, the earth lost its shade and dried up. And I thought, well, that's kind of fascinating that possibly if there had been a better plan for, the foresting, maybe they would have never turned to the slave trade in the first place.
I think I've mentioned before, I once read sort of a fan fiction sequel to The Lord of the Rings written by a Russian guy. And he prefaced it with a sort of like why did I write this? And he said, to me, The Lord of the Rings always smacked of the victors wrote this history.
Right.
And he said, I just thought it would be interesting to see sort of the Mordor perspective. So it's kind of like Mordor survivors telling the story of the aftermath of The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And he also tells the story of how Mordor came to be Mordor and how it was actually sort of that same idea of over farming and trying too hard to do sort of technological things that they weren't quite prepared for the consequences of, causing it to become a wasteland accidentally, not because they liked lava and smoke.
Right. Yeah, I remember this book. I remember I remember the story. I remember when you read it.
Yeah. It's quite. I mean, it's 140 pages. It's a novella at least. It's quite a substantial tome. But you didn't read it though, yeah?
I remember getting it. I think it was in PDF format or something. You sent it to me, but I don't think I ever actually got around to reading it.
I really enjoyed it. It definitely sort of created an interesting sort of like counterpoint to it all, and you could see how,
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, we're saying there's no opportunities for trade, but Dario is coming back with a trade agreement from the Lazarene, so they're going to get some lambs.
That's right, from the lamb men. But I wonder...
You know what they would be good as? Slaves.
Yes, they are. Sadly, they are, I think. Very often enslaved because they're such peaceful people. Kind of like the Nathi, where Sandy.
Yeah, so Dario's return is good on a personal level for Dany, but I don't think he's bringing back enough good news to change the calculus of how Meereen is going.
Yeah, an ally is an ally, but unfortunately they're not a martial people that aren't going to help her here.
The one thing that didn't get mentioned in this chapter, which has been mentioned in all of the previous two chapters of Dany, is the fighting pits. But again, it feels like the fighting pits can only go a certain distance because it would all be money that's already within Meereen, just moving around a little bit.
True. Yes.
You need trade with other cities to keep money flowing in as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
I did think it might be fun to do dragon rides at children's parties.
There you go. They could
pay a premium, I tell you. Not cheap.
Got to sign some waivers before But Skahaz Kandak, he delivers on the new watch. Not watch like wristwatch, but the new...
Wow. What time is it, Daenerys?
I guess I should say the new police force that Dany had wanted. And they're called the Brazen Beasts. And they're made up of shave-pate Meereenese and freedmen. And they're called Brazen Beasts because they wear masks with animal faces to protect their identity, because there's a bounty out on, if any, on them and their family if they're discovered who they are.
Did you watch the HBO version of Watchmen?
I never have. No.
I liked that. I enjoyed it. It was interesting. I don't think it was particularly compelling, but it was very interesting to watch. And that's one of the police force in those days in this story all wear masks to hide their identity because they don't want people to know they're police officers.
Oh, yeah. Kind of the very similar situation here. Mm-hmm. And, of course, this force was paid for by tax on the wealthy houses.
Wealthy, yeah.
Yes. And also, it seems that she went through with the hostage/ward/cupbearer plan, where she wanted a child from all of the major houses in Meereen to keep them honest. We know this because one brought her breakfast, and she seemed very kind and loving to the girl. She gave her a hug and a kiss, and told her the good news about, I think it was about the ships or whatever, and so
it's Dany. She's going to be nice.
Exactly.
She likes kids.
Yes.
Xaro mentions that he's worried about Dany's person. Well, before he tells her he wants her to die horribly.
Yes. He changes this tune quite a bit from the beginning to the end.
Early chapter Xaro is very concerned about her well-being. Joking that she, when she says, "I have Barristan the Bold," and he's like, cups his ear. He's like, "Barristan the Old, you say?"
Right.
He's like, "You used to have Blood Riders looking out for you. Where are they?" And that made me ask a question, Mackelly. Where are they?
Where are they?
Yes, that was the question. It wasn't a big jump from Xaro's question to my question.
Basically the same question.
It's the same question.
Well, she sent her Khalasar, her meager little Khalasar, led by her 3 Blood Riders, to end the slavery that's still being practiced in the outskirt lands of Meereen, kind of the farming areas and such, and mining areas. So they're off doing that. That's why they're not here inside the city with her.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
I paid attention, I would have known.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I will say, I think George Martin does a good job here of giving, I think, presumably on the moral level, George Martin prefers non-slavery to slavery.
Right.
But Xaro is a very sharp character, and Dany is a young girl who's trying to do the moral thing. And it's kind of well written to make him win the arguments, even though he's doing the amoral or immoral side of things.
Right.
So, if you do take an economy that's 100% built on slavery and rip that out cold turkey, it's going to have an impact. One idea I had, I was trying to think of what she could do, is sort of an idea of reparations, just extending what she did for those weavers to the whole thing. The rich families built their wealth on these slaves. And so it is, you could make a moral argument for this redistribution of wealth, but I still don't see how it fuels the economy going forward. It might make the Sons of the Harpy squelch down a little bit, because if these people are now having to learn a trade to make their way in the world, that might be distracting from your getting revenge on the lady who took away all your slaves.
Well, that's a possibility, or it could make them even more bitter and
true,
make them more.
But here's why I think it could work in terms of if she were to do that, and she stays for 6 months, and in those 6 months the rich families have to learn how to grow olives or something, or tend lambs,
dig ditches, such as the
ditches,
friend that Xaro met.
Invent piped hot water, something.
There you go. Electricity. Work on electricity.
That if she were to leave, then it would be hard for them to reestablish themselves as slave owners, because they would just be ordinary people without the wealth they once had to say, "You're my slave again." You'd be like, "You're my neighbor, not being your slave."
That's true. But deep down, there's going to be incredible animosity that they are where they are compared to where they were, and I would think first opportunity, they're going to band together.
She's already got that animosity.
Yes,
it's not going to get any worse.
She does.
She's just defanging them at this point.
Right.
They're going to hate her forever anyway, because she's caused them disruption.
Yeah, Xaro calls Meereen a poor city that was once rich, a starving city that was once fat, a bloody city that was once peaceful. And it really stings Dany because, unfortunately, that's all currently true. Yeah. Even though she hopes to rebuild it in a better image, that's not the way it is right now. And he makes a rather weak argument about Qarth being the greatest city in the known world because slavery allows the elite to ponder deep ideas. Basically, his whole premise is built on some people's lives are more important and more valuable than others. So, they'll stand on the backs of slaves and be their greatest that they can be, which, they could still be great while paying employee wages. They don't have to be slaves.
I've noticed that it tends to be the privilege to make that kind of argument.
Yeah, sure.
As opposed to the downtrodden.
Right.
The downtrodden rarely say, "Oh, thank God I'm downtrodden so that
right.
Xaro can do his thinking."
And, Dany suggests that, to Xaro, just buy slaves from the Dothraki. And he says the Dothraki make slaves. The Giscari train slaves. The Dothraki's not going to enslave people and then train them on, in various skills. And then I was thinking about it. If the Dothraki are no longer able to sell the slave, they don't sell, that's their whole thing. They don't buy and sell. They barter. So when I'm saying sell, you know what I mean. If they're no longer able to take the slaves that they acquire to Slaver's Bay and barter, might she find a huge Khalasar one day at the walls of Meereen alongside of any of her various other enemies that she's made?
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. That could definitely happen. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it, but that's the thing. She has no friends in Essos. I mean, she has Illyrio Mopatis.
Yeah, half a world away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she has a few friends in Volantis, but there's only 3 of them. So again, she's got a few more sailing down the Rhoyne.
The other problem she has amongst her friends she hasn't met yet is that they're going to be rivals with one another. It seems so they're going to fight each other for her.
Yes. So speaking of our friends, that her friends and ours that are in Volantis, Xaro says to her, "You won't bring peace and prosperity to Meereen. A battle has already been won by the Yunkai forces, including 2 sellsword companies and an army from New Gis, and more sellswords are being recruited." And he mentions the Windblown as one of the sellsword companies that's being recruited. And that is the sellsword company that Quentin Martell and Jairus Drinkwater had talked with when, at the end of their chapter in Volantis.
We inferred they were planning to join.
We did conjecture. That's one way to get to Slaver's Bay, because the recruiter they were speaking to was saying, "Hey, we're heading to fight in the war between Meereen and Yunkai." So, And another thing he says, which was, we know it's false, but he says that there's even talk that the wise masters of Yunkai have bought the Golden Company. And we know it's not true, but it's actually quite smart to put out there by the Yunkai, since nobody knows why the Golden Company broke their contract with Myr. Might as well let it leak out, "Hey, we bought them. They're on their way to support us." Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of smart.
Do we know, or is that a spoiler?
Oh, we know that it's Illyrio that, remember?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we know. That's why
we knew that
Tyrion and company are sailing down the Rhoyne to meet up with the Golden Company in Volantis.
Ah.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
It's been a week. That can't be. It's been a week in which Oldham won 4-0.
Right.
Everything's gone. The whole world is gone.
But she gets more bad
Xaro
news.
also mentions that Pyat Pri is after Dany. He and 3 warlocks are hunting for Dany for burning the House of the Undying. This is Xaro. I don't know if he was just being honest or if he actually wanted to throw Dany a little bit of a bone here, but he mentions that Pyat Pri is on the wrong path. He's headed to Pentos, where she is not.
Right, very much definitely not in Pentos.
But Barristan is concerned about this. I mean, who wouldn't be? Yet more people wandering the realm looking to kill her. If you're her bodyguard, that's not...
Right.
That would be a cause of concern.
Yes. But did Euron Greyjoy answer this question for us? Because...
Well, I don't know, did he?
Well, Euron told Victarion, his brother, that he captured 4 warlocks on a galleass from Qarth. The numbers certainly add up. 4 warlocks coming from Qarth.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, he being Euron, told Victarion that they told him of Dany and the dragons. So certainly adds up that the math works. It could be those same warlocks. If so, then Dany and Barristan do not have to worry about them because he has taken them captive. He killed one of them and taken the other 3 captive. So, not a concern.
And to be fair to Xaro, he may not know that.
Right. I doubt he does.
As they stuffed them into a box, Euron might have said, "We're headed to Pentos."
That's right. But speaking of Dany and her dragons, so the bottom line of what Xaro is trying to say is you're outnumbered, you're surrounded, and you're facing certain defeat. And it certainly does look that way. But Dany has one wild card, and that's her dragons, her growing dragons, that are going to keep foes at bay at least for a bit. Xaro dismisses it at first. He says, I see no signs of dragons. They used to be on your shoulder. Your shoulder is as bare as your breast now. And she says, well, yeah, they've grown, and now they range far afield. And I thought, I wondered how many know that they're actually chained up in the basement and that Drogon has gone rogue. Because if word gets out, maybe that's what's keeping the Yunkai from attacking right now, especially since they've already sent Astapor and the Butcher King fleeing back home.
Yeah, but does it change your calculus if you're Yunkai? They're chained up. You don't know why. You might infer maybe she's chained them up because they're a bit unruly. Maybe she's chained them up because she's training them in some way. Yeah. If I go and attack her, is she going to make a promise to not unchain them?
Well, yes, that's true. She probably would unchain them. It's just exactly. would they do anything or just fly away or what?
Right. We know that Dany has no idea what they would do. The Yunkai may not know that. They could be part of dragon training is to keep them chained up for a while and show them pictures of Yunkai people.
Right, that's what she's been working on this whole time down in the basement. That's true. Yeah. They don't know, even if they learn that they're chained up down there, they don't know why.
Right,
that's true.
Right,
yeah.
And occasional sightings of Drogon might make it to their ears, and that could sound like 3 dragons. If you hear it enough, it could sound like all 3. So even if they know they're chained up, that doesn't really change things, and they may not know they're chained up anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you could be. I saw a dragon here. I saw a dragon there. I saw a dragon over there. Oh. That's all the same dragon, but we don't know that.
John Oliver has a running gag about the Olsen twins being just one person who moves very quickly.
Right. Drogon is just like an Olsen twin. What was their line in what was their show? Full House. You gotta be kidding me or something. Dude, I swear it had the word dude in it or something like that. I don't remember anymore.
I didn't know they were in a show. I mean,
they played, I think it was Michelle Tanner on Full House, the baby, with oh gosh, I could think of all the characters' names. Bob Saget and John Stamos,
Yeah, this is Americana. This is totally lost of it. But that's quite a long time ago, right? So, I mean, I guess that they were babies, right?
A long time ago, yes.
They were. I see. They were
early 90s-ish, I want to say.
Okay.
Oh, so there's a question I wanted to ask you. I wanted to see if you had an idea of what Dany meant here. Dany tells Xaro that she was once always afraid as a child, and now, since she came out of Drogo's pyre, she is no longer afraid. She fears only one thing, and he says, "What's that?" And she says, "I might be a young girl, but I'm not dumb enough to tell you what my one fear is." So I'm asking you, what do you think her one fear might have been, or is?
I've pondered this a little bit, and I've not really come up with anything that I find particularly compelling. However, I think in reality, her one fear is letting down the people who have come to rely on her. I think that's her true one fear. I don't think that's what she means.
That's a good answer.
But I think truly that is what she is most afraid of.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. It very well might be if she actually took stock, what she's most afraid of. Yeah.
So what she actually meant, I don't know, falling off her dragon?
Right. Well, so I was thinking possibly she fears the Targaryen madness.
That's a great answer.
Barristan told her of this family trait and her father's madness, and she saw her brother's madness firsthand. So, she might fear, I don't want to be like them.
But the only thing about that is she hasn't had a lot of time to develop this fear. She's only recently become aware of this as a family trait, right? It was only when Barristan told her about it. She didn't know. She knew Viserys was a piece of shit. Right. But she didn't know that was a family trait. I feel like unless you'd known this for a long time, you would never suspect yourself of having it, especially because she's nothing like Viserys. Having learned about Aerys, she'd be like, "Oh, I see now. My brother was just like his father. Thank God I'm nothing like either of them."
That is true. Yeah, you could. That makes a lot of sense.
But it's a good answer, though.
Yeah,
it is a good answer.
Her, now that she knows it, she might be worried that she will follow the same path. But you're right. She has to know that she is unlike her brother. And, that's at least a step in the right direction that she might not acquire this madness.
But am I right in thinking that Aerys wasn't always quite as horrible as he became?
That's true. Yeah, he wasn't.
Yeah, so knowing that, then that's a spectre that looms over you. Viserys, he was a nasty piece of work from day one.
Yeah, he had a lot of tragedy in his life, which certainly didn't help. And
True.
She's had a lot of tragedy in her life, which,
I will extend some grace to Viserys. I apologize.
Online, I was looking it up online, and someone had an answer worth mentioning, and that's being alone. She's lost everyone that's ever been important to her in any way, shape, or form. She lost her parents. She lost Sir Willem Darry, her brother Viserys, Drogo, her unborn child Rhaego. Jorah, betrayed her, and the list goes on. I mean, if I sat here and thought about it, I'm sure I could come up with more.
Yeah.
But she continues to gain supporters and counselors. She's surrounded by people. And this person online was saying, but despite that, she fears losing everyone who matters to her. And that makes sense. I thought it was.
That's a very good answer too.
Yeah.
All right. So there's three things she fears. She cleverly told Xaro there's only one.
And if anyone out there has any ideas, go on the Discord server and let's discuss.
I'll say that I find Lord Ghael. Lord Ghael, as a reminder, is the envoy from King Cleon of Astapor. His behavior is mystifying.
Yeah.
He can't really have expected Dany to send her unsullied into battle.
No.
To to salvage a situation which she told him expressly not to create.
Yes,
and when she does say no, he spits on her in front of a group of people who are armed to the teeth and willing to remove his teeth in short order. And that's what they did. I was like, you must be crazy.
Yes. The request is absolutely unreasonable. Basically, he said, lend us your Unsullied to go fight Astapor. And she said, I can't do that. First of all, I told Great Cleon not to do that. And he did it anyway. And I need my Unsullied here in Meereen. I have enemies. Exactly. You know, I'm saying this now. She has enemies everywhere. She can't be sending. They think she's Ned Stark. Just going to send away all of his defenses until
go ask Ned Stark. He'll help you.
Fat Tom is the only one left. Yeah. So they call him the Butcher King, just a reminder, because he was once a butcher. And he rose to become the king of Astapor. And Xaro XHoan Daxos mentions that the Yunkai sent the Butcher King and his new Unsullied fleeing in battle. And the new Unsullied are just the male sons of the former good masters that were taken and castrated and have been almost certainly poorly trained for battle.
Yeah. I feel like that what they have in common with the Unsullied is the least important part of the Unsullied training. Yeah.
Cleon totally missed the mark on what makes an Unsullied a good soldier. But Dany thinks that Cleon himself is a slaver, and that's why, because the new Unsullied are basically a slave army.
Yeah. You know what you should do, actually? What Cleon should have done was threaten them with that. You go out there and fight for me like your manhood depends upon it.
might have, that might have worked better. Couldn't have worked worse, exactly. That's for sure.
All right. So when news comes that the ships are solid, you know, they're not fantastic ships, but they're good enough. They would do the job that Xaro is promising they would do. All of Dany's council get into a panic over this in various ways.
Yeah.
Understandably, the local Meereenese are the most worried because
absolutely.
They immediately jump to the conclusion, she's out of here and we're in big trouble.
Yeah, they've sided with the usurper. They're going to face awful repercussions from the new, which are likely the old rulers of Meereen.
Right. Just remind me who it was that went to inspect the ships with Barristan and Selmy. It was Admiral Grelio, but yes. I don't remember exactly who he was.
He was the captain of the ships that Illyrio sent to Qarth.
Oh!
Yes. And he's been kind of moping about ever since they took those ships and turned them into war machines.
Yeah, if I were Dany, I'd take his word about those ships just with a tiny pinch of salt, because the last thing he would want to do is come back to Dany and say, they're no good for anything but firewood, because you know she's going to act on that.
Right. Oh, firewood, you say? Perfect. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, so amongst her large council, because it's not a very small council, there's lots of people are talking here, but there's 3 captains of various sellsword companies, which I'd lost track of the fact she had these people.
Yeah, well, so we mentioned Skahaz Mokandak. He is Meereenese, and he is now heading up the Brazen Beasts, which is that new Meereenese city watch that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, is he Shave Pate?
Yes, he's the Shave Pate.
He's Shave Pate,
yes. Right. But then there are 3 captains of the companies of freedmen that Dany tasked Grey Worm with training these companies to fight. And one is called the Stalwart Shields, which is named after the first murdered Unsullied by a son of the Harpy. And that captain is named Milano Yos Dob, or something along those lines. Okay. Then there's the Freed Brothers, which is they're led by Simon Stripeback. He's called Stripeback because of the scars on his back from his time as a slave. And then the Mother's Men, which is led by Marceline, who is Missandei's remaining brother. Remember, her previous brother, her oldest brother, died.
Right. So they're not captains. I said sellswords, but they're not sellsword groups. They're freedmen groups.
Yes,
is what
yes,
they are.
yes.
Yeah,
Good
yeah,
clarification
okay.
right there. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And another person that's there, is named Roma, and she refers to him. He is a Dothraki, and he is there basically in place of her 3 blood riders who I mentioned are off on a task. She refers to him as a wizened Jacaran, and which sounds like I was about to say something else, something inappropriate there. So I looked up. I couldn't. She calls him that every time that his name comes up in this chapter. So I looked that term up, and it's the men in a Khalasar that give mercy to the dying after a battle. They basically remove their heads. They decapitate the dying men. And that's what a Jacaran is. So.
Interesting. I did not know that.
So, it's always been a concern for us how in the world she's going to get the Unsullied back to Westeros. Even just getting across Essos is going to be a problem because they don't ride horses. So,
yeah. You could go by ship, but then you've got the same problem with her Khalasar.
Right.
Pick your poison here.
Yeah. And there's a lot more of the Unsullied than there are of her tiny Khalasar. But Grey Worm suggests, hey, us Unsullied, we'll just march east and you can ride in your ships along the coast. And I think it's Kahaz points out that is a long, dangerous journey. And at some point, the ships are going to have to go out and around the Venerian Peninsula, and the Unsullied will be stuck by themselves, and probably the Dothraki as well. So it's a tough situation, and it got me thinking, how many ships would she possibly need to take all the people that she wants to take? She mentions that the three ships that she had from Admiral Grelio via Illyrio Mopatis was enough for her small Khalasar. But since then, she's acquired 8,000 Unsullied, at least 1,000 sellswords, and tens of thousands of freedmen. She would need Nymeria's 10,000 ships to transport all of them back across.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It is hundreds and hundreds of ships she would need to do it in one trip, for sure.
Yeah.
She doesn't necessarily have to do it in one trip.
No, that's true.
She could send an advanced force of some sort, but she can't leave anyone vulnerable because they'll be immediately re-enslaved.
Yeah, that is also true. Yes. Mm-hmm. But then that's another question. Another question I've been pondering is, how does she get the dragons to Westeros?
Yeah.
She questions it too. They're no longer little and cute, and they'll fly around the masts and dive for fish.
Yeah.
She can't even control them in a city.
Right.
They're going to burn the fleet to cinders.
Exactly. That's the big worry. Unless she can start to control them, you can't put those on a ship because ships are very vulnerable to fire, and that's the one thing that they bring with them. Yeah.
As much as she wants to go home and thought about it, I don't think she can until she learns how to gain control of them, especially with the autumn storms in the, that are in the narrow sea. That just makes things even more complicated.
I worked for Shell for a year at an oil refinery in the UK. Having matches or a lighter on your person was an instantly fireable offence.
Wow.
You could not have them. It was like you were marched off the premises that day if you were caught with them. It made a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I'd never thought about it, but now that you mention it.
I understand Xaro's offer here. Get the troublesome outsider off your continent. Here, take the ships and leave. What I don't understand is declaring war on someone and giving them 13 ships to help their cause.
Yeah.
I don't think she'd have been mad, but she could hardly have been surprised if Xaro had told those ships to hightail it out of here. They're not her ships anymore.
Yeah, so why does he leave them? Hopes that she'll change her mind and leave?
That's true. That's a good point. I mean, it will always be a temptation. As if things go the way he anticipates they're going to go, she's going to get more and more restricted in her movements. She's going to be, she'll never leave the pyramid. The Sons of the Harpy will, run the city around her. And then the neighboring cities will start to invade and chip away at her, drag off slaves.
Yeah.
She might say, you know what, I'm going to cut my losses and leave. So yeah, he's got a point. But then you're just giving someone that you told was going to die in agony an escape route. It's a surprisingly soft touch. I
just think what he wants most is her at least out of Slaver's Bay,
Yeah, that's true. She doesn't have to fight to the death here.
Right. He just wants her gone, and they all want her gone.
Yeah.
And he told Dany in A Clash of Kings that he personally has no warships, only merchant ships. But I looked it up. The rest of Qarth is pretty well stocked with galleys. His fellow 13 own 1,000 ships. The Spicers Guild owns about 1,200 ships, and the Tourmaline Brotherhood owns 800 ships. Now, again, likely most, if not all of those are trading galleys, but with such numbers, they can certainly be retrofit to handle 13 decently in good shape ships.
So you're saying there's just about enough ships to get Dany and her friends across the Narrow Sea?
Yeah, okay, right. So if they really want her gone, why 13 ships? Commit to the cause. Give her 100 ships if you promise to go.
I'll tell you why. Because he doesn't want all those slaves to leave.
Oh, yes.
He wants to re-enlist those slaves and resell them and make more money off them.
Yeah, that's true.
It's maybe enough for her Khalasar and the Unsullied would make sense, but you don't want to let her take the citizens because...
Yeah, I guess, the Dothraki are going to bring in more slaves. It would set them back, but at least it would get her gone and they could get back to the life that they lived beforehand.
It is time for some spoilers. Remember, if you join us at the upper tier of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers, you can get the spoiler section. It's always very interesting. All right. Thank you for the spoilers. How about some background? Tell me about Yunkai.
Yeah, well, so Yunkai is the central adversary in Dany's fight to remove slavery in Slaver's Bay, although Great Cleon seems to keep creating more problems, even though he's supposed to be an ally.
Yeah.
And basically, we've been hearing about the Yunkai since Dany left Astapor back in A Storm of Swords when she marched on to Yunkai. And we were there when she defeated them outside of their walls, but decided not to conquer them like she did in Astapor and Meereen. So what do we know about this city and its occupants? Well, it's the middle of the three great slaver cities of Slaver's Bay, with Meereen to the north and Astapor to the south. It's called the Yellow City because its walls are made of yellow bricks, like how Astapor's are made of red bricks, and Meereen, their walls are made of bricks of many colors. As far as the size of the city, it's similar in size to Astapor and roughly half the size of Meereen. The ruling class is called the Wise Masters, similar to Astapor's Good Masters and Meereen's Great Masters. And Yunkai is known for training bed slaves who are taught the 7 sighs and the 16 seats of pleasure.
Okay.
Xaro, in fact, mentions that his dancers from the beginning of the chapter are actually slaves trained in Yunkai.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So there you go.
All right, comparison with the television show, things have deviated quite a bit here. Xaro got his comeuppance in Qarth before Dany left, so he's not here to threaten or entice her. Her concerns are more localized in the TV show. Less talk about the economy of Meereen, more about the Sons of the Harpies insurgency. But really what happened in this chapter was not really reflected in the TV show, so I don't really have anything.
That makes sense. I remember him getting locked in that...
the vault.
Yeah,
with one of her handmaids.
Yes, Dorea, I think it was.
Dorea, yeah. Who obviously was just like, hey, I don't want to come back for the next season. Throw her in as well then.
Right. Cutting some costs.
Yeah. Pedantry Corner. as always, there's some decisions that I find very strange, but they are character decisions, and
Yeah.
arming your opponent when you're going into war seems an odd one to me. But I like your counter argument; it was solid, so that's why it's not pedantry.
All right. Yeah. Jenny will be happy. Several episodes in a row without any
I
pedantry.
know. I want more pedantry, not to annoy Jenny, just because I like pedantry. All right, news and notes.
News and notes. Well, we have a new Buy Me a Coffee sustainer, which is always fantastic. Yes, Kevin has joined us at the small council level, which is currently our highest tier.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Kevin. That's fantastic.
Yes, we will definitely be interacting with Kevin.
The first meeting of the small council.
Yes, that's right. I'm sure we'll be getting to know Kevin well. So thank you. We're glad to have you, and we're very much looking forward to getting to know you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Really looking forward to that. Let's conclude this one. Dany has to take the moral course, even though it puts her in grave peril, because that's why we love her.
Yeah.
All her advisor's advice can basically be summed up by what would they, the advisor, want to happen. Right. I've noticed that.
What's best for them. Yes.
Exactly. Grey Worm's like, I don't really want to go on that ship. I'll walk that long road. Shave Pate's like, don't leave me.
Yes. Reznak is in
Barristan's
the same boat.
like, let's go home.
Yes, right. Yeah, they all do fall in that category, which is something that Jorah would not have been thinking about. What's best for him.
Exactly. She should think about that, because Jorah genuinely would give her the advice that was best for her. All these others, and I'm not saying that they've got, that their motives are corrupt. It's just they see things through the prism of their own wants.
Yeah. If I was Reznak, I would be thinking the same thing. Oh, no,
Absolutely.
You can't leave.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make him treacherous.
Right.
It just makes him human. But Jorah would self-sacrifice for Dany in a heartbeat.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. And does Qarth's declaration of war really change anything? It's just one more log on the pyre,
That's very true. And she's not really afraid of pyres anyway.
Right. If there's anything she could face, it's a pyre.
Yeah. It'd be funny if that one secret fear is fire. Really?
Really? Of all things.
But she does now have a navy, so that's kind of exciting. She could make use of that, perhaps.
Maybe she'll turn that into a pyre.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I will say the economic paths to salvation narrow all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's not a lot you can replace the biggest industry of your city with in a heartbeat. It's just not. It's not easy to do.
Especially when there is nothing else around to really cultivate and trade.
All you've got around you are enemies telling you that you've made a mistake and wanting you to go back. They're not going to help you build up a new economy.
Right.
The last thing they want for you to do is to succeed.
And it doesn't help that they're in the far corner of Slaver's Bay, and Yunkai is south toward the mouth of the bay. Of
the bay, yeah.
Yeah, because they can't even get reinforcements or anything.
Yeah.
They can't even bribe anyone to come bring them reinforcements because they got to get past Yunkai.
Yeah. Next up, we have a Jon chapter, which is always fun. Find out how things are going at the wall.
What's not fun about going to the wall?
Nothing. There's nothing not fun about going to the wall. We're popping on the haberdashery. All right, there's 3 ways that you can help us. You can leave us a 5-star rating and possibly a review. We'll read it out. You can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhall. There, you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and your interest. The upper tiers, like the small council that Kevin joined, get the spoiler section.
That's right. Yeah.
Nice. Or you can just make a donation directly to our cause at our website, ghostsofharrenhall.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, one thing you could do is you could send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. Just please keep in mind, we have no means of responding, but we do enjoy reading them, especially when they say nice things about us.
I suppose if you put your email and phone number in your text, we could, but we're not recommending that, just to be clear.
Yeah, that's true. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.